I think emerging markets have the advantage because we have so many untapped problems that like, yes, we don't necessarily have the data for these problems, but there's so many problems and coming up with creative ways. So for example, an aspect of machine learning is trying to figure out ways to build models with as little data as possible, right? So in this part of the world, it's easy to build large, like billions of like models that have like billions of parameters because we have a lot of data here. But the problem in emerging markets is that we don't have this data captured, right? So it's harder to build those large models.
My guest today is a research scientist and machine learning engineer. She began her journey into engineering with an electrical engineering degree from Covenant University in Nigeria before moving to Canada to complete a master's in engineering design. She currently works at Google as a machine learning engineer, whilst also running her very own content platform online, educating and enriching others on her journey and how to level up in tech. My guest today is Eniola Alese. Welcome to the show, Eniola. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much, May. I'm doing great. And you?
I'm doing awesome. What a beautiful day in New York it is today. So really getting into spring and actually enjoying spring as well. So excited for that. So why don't we talk about your journey? Like, how did you come to embark on the career that you're in now and just your journey into, this machine learning engineering path?
Yeah, sure. So I think right from when I was young, I've always been interested in like math, engineering. When I was young, I used to take apart like the TV remote control and just try to figure out like how it works. I was very just interested in engineering in general. And then for my undergrad degree, I did what most Nigerians do. I just went like the routes that would, secure me like a job like after school. So I did electrical engineering. But I still never felt like during my undergrad degree, I just never felt connected to what I was like learning and studying. And yeah, I just never had that passion I had when I was like a kid. So I was like, okay, so after my undergrad, maybe if I get a master's degree, I would find that passion. So I decided to do a master's degree in engineering design. But also I started doing that and I still didn't, find that passion. It wasn't until one day I went for like an excursion during my master's degree to the Google office in Canada. And then I heard someone, like there was a presentation and they were talking about neural networks and machine learning. And immediately that spark I had like as a kid came back and I was like, oh my God, like this is definitely what I want to like, this is what I want to do for like a career. And like, that's kind of where it started from. So yeah, that's how my journey started. And after that, I started taking machine learning classes online, started learning how to program and then the rest has been, and yeah, and then I'm here now, yeah.
Wow, sounds like you can really trace back to while you were very young and the idea of taking things apart and then back together, and then fast forward to that ignition in interest when you actually went into an environment where they were actually utilizing tools that really connected you back to the sciences there. So what was your first machine learning project like then? So you spoke about doing a lot of these MOOCs online. How did you, and what was that process like, and what was it about? If you can tell us more, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So my first project, so I was working, so during the time I started picking up machine learning, I was working at a company where we used to sell ventilation units, right, to other businesses. And I noticed that like, so we had this problem whereby when we're trying to reach new customers, we had to like would manually search for on Google, search for like, similar companies to XYZ company, right? And then reach out to them and then try to sell our products to them, right? And it just came to me that, okay, like it's possible, because I was learning ML at that time, and it came to me that, oh my God, it's possible to automate this process. It's possible to build a model that would, automatically find similar businesses to the customers we already have, and then just like we drastically reduce the time it takes for us to keep searching online for new customers. And so I And I decided, okay, this would be my first project. I spoke to my boss about it, and he was very excited because he loved, like, it wasn't a tech company, but he loved the idea that, like, I would be bringing something that, like, cool to the business. And so I started working on that. I had to gather the data. I had to like manually scrape the web, gather companies' data, build the model, build a website, deploy the model. So I had to go throughout the whole like machine learning cycle. And I think that really helped me. So prior to that, I was just doing a lot of like MOOCs. I was doing a lot of courses. So I hadn't really gotten like a taste for the actual machine learning experience. So I feel like going to that project and like deploying and then seeing like it works and like seeing everyone excited to use like the platform was very fulfilling, and it definitely gave me the experience to apply for my next job and like feel more confident in the field.
Awesome. So I mean, my next question was going to be more like, how much of, when we talk about machine learning engineering, there's obviously understanding how the models work. And then there's obviously a very heavy engineering side to it from a computing angle. Like, could you talk to us a little bit more about what your understanding and experience of machine learning engineering is like? And the reason I ask that is because every job can have different titles and it means something else when you actually get there. It's data science, machine learning engineer, machine research engineer. So just for our audience, from your perspective, what does it mean to you? And what tools do you think equip you to be good at what you do on a daily basis as well?
So I've kind of been a bit on the spectrum of the machine learning spectrum. So I've done a bit of data science. I've done a bit of applied research where I'm mostly just building models. And then currently I'm doing more of trying to take those models and put them into production. So, and I feel like all of those areas require different levels of engineering, different levels of math. It varies, right? So right now in my role as a ML engineer, I think, so right now in my role as an ML engineer, so it's more of, so the skills, so the skills that help me most is like thinking more of from an infrastructure perspective. So in terms of like what's the latency of the model? So I'm shifting away from actually trying to build models that do XYZ to more of, how can we make this model work on this platform? What's the scale of the model? How can we make this faster? What's the, do we need to return results in real time? Just making sure that we fit into all the like engineering constraints that we have. So that's for like a machine learning engineer, that's kind of more of like, that's more of the direction or more of the skills that I'm working on now, when compared to like if I was doing like applied research, if I was just like building models. So it's more of, okay, what kind of model would work for this particular problem? What kind of data do we need? Is the model overfitting? Is the model, so trying to improve the model as compared to trying to make those models work in the real world.
That's a really good sort of spectrum of experiences you've had so far, so young into your career as well. So from the little bit you've been able to see of each of those areas, what kind of person do you think is well suited to, for example, the model building aspects, and what kind of person do you think is better suited to what you're doing more recently, where it's more about optimizing for production and thinking about the infrastructure needs and etc.?
Mm-hmm. I think if you're someone that loves experimenting, someone that loves to, there's an idea and like you're not necessarily focused on like the outcome of your day, it's more of experimenting and seeing, okay, I have this intuition, I have this hypothesis, let me try this, let me try this, let me try that. I think model building and doing more of applied research would be like a great fit, because like the end goal is not necessarily to get something working. The end goal is more to see if, because the thing about machine learning and deep learning is it's not deterministic, right? Like you don't know what you're going to get at the end, right? So it's more of trying different models, tweaking the data, tweaking the model, just optimizing things and trying things. So if you're someone that enjoys experimenting and trying things, definitely model building is a great fit. But if you're someone who loves to, who loves to make things work, who loves to, like I said, who loves to build like pipelines, who loves to like build tools to like that enables like the people who build the models to do their work more efficiently, who loves to, see things work faster, or see things work, more at scale, then definitely like an ML engineer role is like more of a better fit.
Yeah. So if we talk about trying to break into the industry, like you've come from an emerging market, like you did your first degree in an emerging market. And so there's a lot of people around the world, emerging market or not, that are trying to break into the industry. How does your advice differ for those sets of people? So if you are coming from more of an emerging market, how would you advise they try to penetrate working within their market as a machine learning engineer? And then how does that differ if you're in a market like Canada or the US and you're quite early in your career? How would you advise they go about it in that sort of environment as well? How does your advice differ for both audiences?
Yeah, so so because of the internet, right? Like the gift of the internet, I feel like it wouldn't really differ much, because if in an emerging market, because most people, not most people, but like a sizable amount of people have access to the internet, right? And I feel like once you have access to the internet, the resources so the key thing is to learn, right? So once you can learn like the basic skills, right? You take in like a couple of MOCs, and then the next thing is just to find, and I think emerging markets have the advantage because we have so many untapped problems that like, yes, we don't necessarily have the data for these problems, but there's so many problems, and coming up with creative ways. So for example, an aspect of machine learning is trying to figure out ways to build models with as little data as possible, right? So in this part of the world, it's easy to build large, like billions of like models that have like billions of parameters, because we have a lot of data here. But the problem in emerging markets is that we don't have this data captured, right? So it's harder to build those large models. But I think the upside to that is that like it then, I won't say forces, but it then inspires. I feel like it's a great opportunity to inspire aspiring either research scientists, applied research scientists, but anyone interested in this area to start to think of ways to utilize these models, to utilize like the small sets of data we have. So it's possible, right? It's just because we have so much data in this part of the world, people are not really focused in those. They just focus, oh, you have data, so let's build models. But because we don't have that much data like in emerging markets, I feel like it's a good opportunity to create something new that wouldn't just be valuable in like these markets, it would be valuable like all over the world, because like eventually like we'll get to it. It's not every problem that has tons and tons of data. So having a solution that works well for a small amount of data would be, globally transformative. So I feel like there's an opportunity to do that. Yeah, and I feel like it's also a step forward. Like there's also an opportunity to like do more in terms of like data gathering. So yes, we don't have the data, right? But it's a step to start to think of, okay, how can we gather this data? Like how can we plan in it can make like a 2-5 year plan to, start to implement ways by which we can, start to think in more of a data way, right? So start to think of ways we can start to build these pipelines to gather this data and like eventually catch up to like the progress that has been made like in this part of the world. But so yeah, my advice doesn't really change. I feel like as long as like one has access to the internet, one has like the willingness and the passion to do something cool, to do something exciting in this field, you just need to think creatively and think of ways to think of ways to bypass any like trade, or bypass any like bottlenecks that like such as like data, or like just like that, such as like the data problems, right? So yeah, so my advice doesn't really change. I think it's just more of like the willingness to learn and the passion for building cool machine learning applications. And then I feel like as long as you have access to the internet, right, that like anything is possible. And we definitely have like so many cloud providers, right? You have like GCP, you have AWS. So like training these models, and these providers give like credits to, researchers or engineers in emerging markets. So like there's so many resources on the internet that would open the pathway for like people who are trying to break into this field to do like cool things. Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think I see the problems of emerging markets as opportunities. And it's just, if you can think about how to make solutions work for that specific market. I don't believe in this copy and paste attitude of, oh, we did Uber here, let's just do Uber here, it works. I think you really have to think about the nuances of that market, the problems of that market. And those problems actually are incredible opportunities. So you're absolutely right. There's one way we can go about it is to build models that don't require as much data. But another way is actually, we have data, but we're not harnessing it digitally. Like that is an initiative by itself. So I think you make an excellent point. And I completely agree that even the democratization of education through online, the fact that digital mobile penetration increases rapidly year by year in emerging markets, the collision of both those things is only going to amplify opportunities for people to get into this. I think when I have spoken to people, what they sometimes struggle with is in emerging markets, these roles are also still in their infancy. So, they might not advertise for as many roles, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have data roles. So it's more of they're trying to think, how do they creatively position themselves when the roles are not officially, named as yet, or they don't seem to exist yet, but that you can provide value to that company in some way from a data perspective, from an engineering perspective. They're just not quite there yet, so that's sometimes the challenge as well.
Yeah.
So like, it kind of presents like a chicken and egg problem, especially if you're early on in your career. Like, how do you get machine learning experience to position yourself before getting the machine learning engineering job? Like how, it's an interesting problem. So, I mean, I have some ideas. Would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think okay, so I don't really see it as a chicken and egg problem, and I'll explain why. So I feel like, I think that most employers, yes, they say you need, this number of years of experience, but mostly they're just looking for people. In my experience, I feel like employers are looking for people, like I said, who are just hungry to learn and hungry to build cool things, or like build stuff with machine learning, right? And I feel like it's easy to, like, once you are able to demonstrate this skill. So for example, like I said, like I started with a project that I was like, okay, this would be a really great way, because I didn't have prior experience to that, right? But I decided, okay, if I could build something, right, that I could showcase on my resume that yes, I didn't do this, I wasn't employed to do this, right? I did this like as a side project, but I could do this for you if you employ me, right? So, and I feel like there's so many opportunities there. There are ways by which you can, and like I said, it requires people to think creatively, like think out of the box. Okay, if an employer is expecting me to have X number of years of experience and be able and to know Python and to know TensorFlow and to know PyTorch and to know how to build models, I feel like, so if I could then work on some projects that would encompass all of these skills, I could put down my resume, I could talk about that in interviews. And like once an employer sees that, okay, this person doesn't have formal experience, but they've been able to get like a proxy of that experience from working on these side projects. I don't think, like, in my experience, I feel like employers are very open, because it even shows a lot of initiative, right? So it's also something people are very willing to employ people to come on board for, when they show that kind of like initiative and that kind of drive and that kind of passion to learn. and build things. So I think it's possible. But yes, definitely I agree. On the job description, it does say you have to have, this number of years of experience, but it's just about finding ways to go about that and sell yourself in such a way that, and no employer can say, okay, yes, they don't have formal experience, but they do have what it takes to do the job.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, I think it also depends on what stage the company is at as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In startups, exactly. So my first job was in a startup, and startups are very willing to hire people without experience because they don't have the luxury to be picky and say, oh, you don't have this or you don't have that. As long as you have that hunger, they're very, very willing and open to hire you and to allow you learn on the job and learn as you go. So I feel like you're right. So it depends on that. So it's so you can get experience from internships. You can get experience from joining an early stage startups. So all of those that give you that experience. And then if you want to transition to like a big company, like one of the fan companies, then it becomes easier. So yeah, I think there are ways to definitely go about that problem, especially like in the times that we live in, where like everything is yeah.
I also feel, again, the added opportunity post the pandemic is remote work is on the rise significantly. And obviously there's advantages to being able to sit with someone and learn day to day, but I feel there are so many tools that are evolving in the ecosystem of work that are making things just, that much easier to accomplish. So I agree on that note. And looking at it on the other side, conversely on the career side, there are growing tools in the ecosystem of, machine learning, data science, etc., such as auto ML, for example. What are your thoughts on that? And how would you advise someone to position themselves from a job security perspective in terms of thinking of like, if I really want to hedge, like what is the best role for me to go for? Should I be an applied research scientist? Should I be, an engineer? What should they do considering how these tools are growing the ecosystem? And what are your general thoughts about these tools anyway?
So for things like auto ML, so I think there's a long way. Okay, so we have a long way. So machine learning, deep learning is still in its infancy stages, right? Like we're barely scratching the surface of what we can do, right? So there's a long way for us to get to before like we fully automate, like jobs. So in terms of job security, I feel like the focus shouldn't necessarily be on, okay, would this be automated away in X number of years? I think it should be more of, what am I passionate about and am I open to learning? Because so once you have those two things, right, it becomes, no matter what gets automated away, because I see things like architecture selection or model optimization, or so things that like it's easy for a computer to, because right now, like if I want to build a model, I have to decide, okay, do I want to use an LSTM or do I want to use a transformer network, or do I, but slowly we're starting to see, okay, these certain architectures work for these types of problems. So it will be easier to build like an auto ML system that can automatically select those models, optimize it. And so maybe we don't really need humans as much to do that. But I think it's a lot, because we can do that now, but not as well as a human. Like it's still in its infancy stages, right? So I feel like right now the focus should be on just having an open mind to learning and being able to pivot regardless. So if something is being phased out, you're able to take your skills and pivot to another aspect of the field. So yeah, I definitely think that in terms of hedging your bets, I think the best bet, like the best advice I can give is to keep learning. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it's to just be open and to not be very fixed on like a particular tool set or a particular language or a particular role or a particular subfield of the field. And it's to just keep an open mind and just watch out for opportunities that like ring true to you, and then as long as you're open to learning, like I feel like the sky is like the starting point. So
yeah, great
yeah.
advice. So like another thing I get a lot people talk about is the whole PhD thing. Do you really need a PhD to advance your career in this industry? And I know that you're still you have an advanced degree, obviously you have your master's, for example, but what do you think about the whole PhD thing, and when do you think it's necessary? And of the people you work with that do have that, what do you think differentiates them from others as well in the work they do?
Yeah, definitely. I think if one is looking to go into more like research, for example, finding like, groundbreaking, like, pushing the state of the art of the field, for example, a PhD is very, very, I feel like it's important because like you get to learn, like research is just, you get to learn all the tools to actually carry out research that could advance the field, and you would need, and a PhD gives you those skills to do that. So if you're someone who is looking to maybe, develop the next BERT or the next GPT-3 or the next, just the next big thing in the field, right? A PhD definitely helps. Or if you're someone who is looking to more of like just build applications, build cool things, or improve business processes, a PhD is definitely not required, because like most of the academic work or most of the math is just like basic calculus or like basic linear algebra, right? You don't necessarily need a PhD to accomplish that. So, and yeah, I feel like working with research scientists, like what differentiates them is like they are mostly like I said, they're mostly all about like experimenting, like you're always running experiments, always, thinking of, okay, if I change the structure this way, or if I, combine these neurons in this way, would this result in this outcome, right? So they have that mindset of finding new things, innovating, right? So compared to like people like me who are just looking to like, people like me who are more looking to build applications so taking the models or taking the things that they have discovered and they have built and turning them into products that like, everyday users can use. So it depends on like the interest of the person, but I would say definitely it's important if you're looking to, like I said, advance the field. It's very important. I feel like it's a good thing to get a PhD, but if you're looking to more of, applying it in day-to-day life, I don't necessarily think it's an important thing to have.
Cool. So more generally about machine learning, what industries do you think or consider really exciting to apply some of these tools and techniques to? What fields interest you the most?
So right now, it's definitely in the field of voice. I feel like definitely in this area of voice, and more specifically applying like voice technologies to emerging markets, to like developing countries. I feel like English has been like a dominant like language, right? And so most of these other like low resource languages have not really gotten the benefit of machine learning, right? So I think it's exciting to be able to, work on and build, tools. So right now, like I have like a dear friend who has a startup called Amazet2, and what they're doing is trying to build voice applications that allow anyone, like I'm from Nigeria, right? And there are people in Nigeria who don't speak a word of English. They speak like Yoruba or Igbo, and or allowing them to be able to communicate with their devices, with their computers or with their phones using their local languages. So I feel like those kind of applications excite me because it just opens up the internet to people who ordinarily may not have access because they don't speak English, right? So I feel like building those kind of tools, for like developing countries and people who don't necessarily speak English is something I'm really passionate and excited to see more of.
No, that sounds amazing. On my program at Cornell, I've taken a lot of extra interaction design courses. Voice has been a big part of that. I see so much prospect and opportunity in emerging markets where most people just see risk. And so the collaboration of both those ideas sounds amazing. We definitely would love to link that in the bio of this podcast if others are also interested and want to see more about what they're doing. I think it's fantastic. So like, let's talk a little bit more about like, you know, in the scope of what do you think have been like, so you work with data, you work with models, you're productionizing things, like what do you think the biggest challenges are for you in your role day to day, and someone that's considering, you know, working in this field needs to be aware of? What skills do you think, you know, moving away just from technical skills, but thinking more broadly, what skills are important and what are the biggest challenges of working in a role like this?
I think my two biggest challenges are burnout and imposter syndrome. Because like I said, there's a lot to learn in this field, and like a lot changes. Like something that was, you know, state of the art today, in 2 months' time has been phased out by something new. So you always have to keep learning and, you know, keep adapting with like the change in technology. And I feel like that can cause, or in my experience, that definitely has, you know, caused burnout, right? And the other thing is imposter syndrome. So just not sometimes just feeling, because I come from an unconventional background into this field, right? So sometimes I get the feeling of, oh, okay, you know, am I should I have gotten a computer science degree, or, you know, am I supposed to be here? But all of those, so like I feel like those, I did not expect to you know, encounter these, but I did. Yeah, so definitely I think anyone should definitely be aware that it's possible to encounter, but it's not, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's just a normal thing that, you know, a lot of people experience. So it's just being aware that it's possible, and then making sure, like for burnout, I'm just making sure like you have like a good work-life balance, just making sure like you're not making sure that you're not, you know, overly just working and working and working and working, just making time to rest, making time to, you know, do other things that are not like work focused, so that you have, so like your brain is well rested, so you can, you know, learn and, you know, give your best in like your day-to-day work. So definitely I would say those are my mostly burnout, because like it's things are constant. You have to keep learning, right? So finding ways to pace yourself and finding ways to learn, or finding the ways that you learn best, and, you know, building structures around that, so that like you have like a more sustainable career. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it sounds very much like you're always learning and you need to have that mindset. You can't like stop. So that's important. And you mentioned something when you were speaking that, you know, should you have gone a computer science degree? What do you think about that? Because I actually saw another blogger who pivoted to technology. She had like a legal background, I think, or was studying something legal. But anyway, she sort of, you know, made a post saying, should have just done a computer science degree. She did like a boot camp. So what do you think about that? Like, especially for people that are at that point, they can still make that pivot to actually just do a degree that is heavily biased towards computer science. In hindsight, what are your thoughts? Is it better to just be on that path from day one, or is it better to have a different perspective and then try to get into the field?
If I could go back, I would definitely get a computer science degree, just because like I feel like it gives you a more solid understanding of the fundamentals of, like, because everything we do still stems back to the fundamentals of how computers work and, you know, how computers were built, how they were developed. So I feel like having that having that good, you know, foundation would help like down the line. Doesn't mean that if you don't have it, because like I said, like anyone can learn anything. It just gives a bit of advantage whereby like you already know, like for example, and I think it comes out more in interviews, to be honest. It comes out more in interviews, because like a lot of like technical interviews, you know, try to test your knowledge in for example, basic data structures and algorithms, whereby if in a 4-year computer science degree, you get to learn all of this. While if you have like a very different background, it becomes a bit harder to, it just becomes a bit harder to learn all these new things, right? So like I said, if anyone is considering, what kind of major should I go for like an undergrad, I don't think a computer science degree is a bad idea at all. I would advise anyone to, go for it. But like, if you don't have it, it's also not a disadvantage because like I said, it's all about what you can do, right? It's all about what you can learn and what you can deliver. So it's not really about the degree you have. It just gives you that like better foundation whereby if you don't have it, it might be a bit harder to gain all of the necessary things that you need to be more efficient in your work. So yeah, I would definitely I would advise to get it, but it's not a like hard it's not a hard negative if you don't have a degree. It's more of it's more of, and now like we have like exactly like we have boot camps, we have like online courses, so like it's easy to, so right now I feel like it's way easier to still learn and have these necessary skills that you don't necessarily have to go to like a 4-year degree. But a 4-year degree would, in my opinion, really, really help you set you up for success, especially if you're looking to, if you're thinking of going into research whereby you want to like, advance or build, like I said, like in the baby stages of AI and machine learning, there's so much that we can still do. So if you're looking to like, build more intelligent, algorithms, right? I definitely think going the computer science route is a good idea.
Interesting. So, the pathway that you've taken to get where you are today wasn't just like automatically, set and done. Like, so for someone that is trying to break in to, the industry, wants to pursue a similar path that you've done, what advice would you give to them? And in the context of also the process of actually going through application, rejection, and preparing themselves for that journey and how to handle, how to pivot, how to get feedback from, and then improve. How would you best advise them? What do you wish you had known? And what have you learned from the process to pass on?
I think what I've learned most is that, like I said, like rejection is like failure and rejection are not bad things. Like they're actually very important to learning and going to the next step, right? So in my experience, like I've been rejected like so many times. Like I failed, but I feel like every time I got those failures, every time I got those rejections, I found like things I'm like, okay, I could improve in this area. This rejection just means, okay, there's something I can improve on for the next time. And then the next time I got better in that, right? So definitely like it would suck. It would, you'll feel all the feelings that comes with that. But like, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it helps prepare you for like it helps propel you like to the next level or to the next big thing. And I think the other thing is just to not, I won't say give up, but just to not be overwhelmed and just like give up, because like it's easy, right? Especially like if you're coming from a non-traditional background and you're trying to break in, there's a lot of there's a lot of obstacles you would have to go past, right? So, and that may not necessarily be like the prettiest of experiences, but just knowing that it's possible, like as long as you are, as long as you're learning from, like for example, if you go for an interview and you don't like pass that interview, like it sucks, but like as long as you're learning, okay, what did I do wrong? How can I, next time, how could I have solved this problem better? Definitely. I think that's my, and I think everyone's path is also different. Like everyone I even know that in this field came like through different like areas. So there's not really one path to get to like where you want to get to, but it's just knowing that it's possible to get there. But like there would be rejection, there would be failures, but you just have to see those things as stepping stones and like, and also reaching out. Exactly. I think another thing is just reaching out to other people who have done it, right? You know, learning from their experience, asking questions. Okay, you know, how did you do this? How did you do that? Like, definitely talking to people was a big thing for me. Just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, asking for the experience, asking for advice, and incorporating that into your own like learning path from your own career path. Yeah, I think those are my like two biggest advices. So
and what resources, you know, helped you along the way and continue to help you? We'd love to be able to link some of these down, but if you could just mention a few of those, that'd be awesome.
So for like the machine learning side, definitely courses by Andrew Ng. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but like he's popular. Anyone who's he's like this super popular Stanford professor, but he's a phenomenal teacher in terms of like just showing you how these things actually work. So that was really helpful. I think I took probably all of his courses. I watched all of his videos, and he's a great teacher. So definitely courses by Andrew Ng helped me, you know, get like a solid understanding of what was going on the ML part. And then for interviews, the regular like lead code, you know, taking like lead code. I think there's some educative course that really helped me like hone my interview skills, or you know, just hone how to solve problems or solve coding problems during interviews, right? Because it's also a skill, right? Yeah, and what else? What other resources? Definitely being in touch with the ML research community. So attending conferences. So there are a couple of conferences. There's NeurIPS, there's ICLR, there is yeah, there's just a couple of there's EMNLP. So depending on, you know, your area of interest, so definitely being plugged into those research conferences, attending them, networking, talking to people, and also, you know, being up to date with like the state of the art, like reading research papers, you know, being connected to like the just being connected to the machine learning community in any way you can has definitely also like helped me tremendously.
Absolutely. And I would say that advice follows through even to the emerging markets as well. For those listening from there are communities there that you can engage with, very much so. And so in concluding, like, what have been like, you know, the three, you know, most influential either people, books, or ideas to you today, and why? If you could share, that'd be awesome.
I think there's just been one influential person in like so far, his name is Eckhart Tolle. So he has two books which like absolutely changed my life. So it's more of just, he talks more of just being in the present moment. So it's I'm a bit of a spiritual person, so it's just being present and not, because as humans, like we tend to like always thinking, oh, like I shouldn't have done that, or like, when what happened yesterday, or what would happen tomorrow. I think just learning from him that like being present is like the present moment is all that matters, right? So like if we, and I learned that like when I'm being present, that's when I'm most my best version of myself. That's when it's easy for me to show up like as my full authentic self. And the second person is this author. Her name is Brené Brown. Love Brené Brown. She also talks about like being authentic, right? Because like a lot of these things, like it's she talks about, you know, how you know, showing up as your authentic self, regardless of what that self is always like a big plus. It's always like it's always a good thing. So I think those two principles of always being present and always showing up as my authentic self, or just showing up as my real self, regardless of like where I am, have been like the principal foundations I live my life by. So those are the two things that have like definitely, you know, helped me grow and yeah, and led me to where I am right now.
Awesome. Lots of juicy nuggets in here. Thank you so much for sharing. Where can our listeners connect with you online post the show?
So I have a YouTube channel, like as me mentioned, and so I try to make content around, having a career in ML and tech. So definitely, I think YouTube is where it's easiest to connect with me on, and also LinkedIn. If like anyone has like wants to send me like any message or just wants to chat, like LinkedIn is definitely LinkedIn and YouTube are where like it's easiest to find me.
Fantastic. And we'll link that in the show notes as well. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this morning, Eniola. Thank you so much for stopping by. Wishing you every success now and for the future at Google and wherever else and whatever else you do. And best of luck to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, me.
All right.